You know, we constantly talk about fails in deer hunting and habitat work because I believe that's one of the best ways to learn. I think, you know, on one hand, you could say a smart person analyzes what you're trying to do, deer hunting, planting, working on habitat, fishing, whatever you do, and you analyze the situation, you gather all the facts, and then you make decisions going forward in a positive manner with a calculation of what will work and saying, I think if I do all these things, it's going to work. I think it's even more effective and even a smarter position to really look out there, the failures. That's one reason I like reading reviews of different products is if you read those failures, you can look at that and say, you know what, they're talking about that being a failure, but really they didn't understand the product. And so you might look at a product that has several failures, for example, or poor reviews, and you look at this accumulation, you say, you know what, they're all saying the same thing, and it's a misunderstanding of the product or misplacement of the product. It helps you understand the product. You know, when you're looking at testing, quizzing, taking exams, it really helps if you have a review book. I remember taking securities testings, Series 7 license, but Series 6, 63, mutual funds, annuities, variable contracts, insurance, things like that when I worked for the bank back in the day. That, you know, for testing, all of a sudden you're 10 years removed from school or 15, you're looking at these exams thinking, man, I'm a long ways away from taking a test. But you look at the review manual and you look at the answers, and if you purely focus on the answers of what's right, you really miss the big picture of the 3 or 4 that were wrong and why they're wrong. And so it always helped to me to understand what was wrong first out of those 3 or 4 questions, and that helped me easily learn what was number 1, what was right, and remember that for the future. And so we focus on these fails to help you. I hope that makes sense, and I hope you don't get sick of seeing fails. And when it comes to deer hunting, there's a lot of failures. I think about the early season, specifically opening day. I could have made a huge list up here, and sometimes that helps because then I don't fumble my thoughts in my head and ramble all over the place, and I'm a little bit more concise. That's why we write these points out here. But I know some failures in the early season. For example, you see a lot of people going out and just sitting all day. They're taking an all-day sit in a stand when really these bucks are going right to bed. They're staying in a stationary position all day except getting up and moving 20 feet to eat, and then they're going back to a food source and to hang out and be safe and social and really not move around much, just get fat and lazy all night. And so when you're sitting in a stand, you're effectively wasting time. And if you went into a spot that should be an evening spot, that's also a good daybreak spot, meaning that if you go in there, you might have spooked out and ruined your hunt for the evening. So that's one fail I see a lot of people doing. They'll have their backpack loaded up, which is another thing in itself. I'm a minimalist when I go in hunting. I don't like carrying a lot of gear, because I think each one of those has a potential to ruin the hunt, whether it's getting into your backpack, zippers, movement, getting little snacks out, books you're reading, water, whatever it might be. All those movements have a potential to fail, and you're lowering your potential success when you go in the woods with each one of those items. But 2, you know, people will show this big list of things they're getting out and going into the woods with in the early season, and they're going to carry this backpack in, and it's almost like for more social media pictures. It's really not helping you in any way. It's kind of like, well, cool, yeah, you're sitting on a stand all day. Pat yourself on the back. You're going to burn yourself out early, and most of that day is wasted. Most of the time you should be sitting in an exactly different spot, completely different spot in the evening that you would in the morning. And people will say, well, I only hunt public land, I only have 1 stand. Hey, on public land, you should have 20, 30, 40, 50. The cool thing about public land is if you put in enough boot time, then, and everyone thinks, well, private land's easy. You just show up and shoot fish in a barrel, right? It's not like that. There's a lot of preparation it takes on private land to do it right. And the problem is on private land, if you're hunting 80 acres and you make a couple stupid mistakes, you just ruin your hunt for 2 or 3 weeks. But it takes a lot of time. Even if you're planting a lot of food plots, water holes, mock scrapes, stand locations, blind locations, clearing, shooting lanes, access lanes, maybe some switchgrass habitat. We plant rabbitat, you know, all those rabbit houses. So it takes a lot of time. So someone hunting public land says, well, I only have 1 stand location. We'll be right back to today's video, but guys, thank you so much. We launched our seed company about 3 weeks ago, and the success has been overwhelming. We've currently had orders from 36 states. We planted our food plot seed because Dylan and I wanted to get 1 plot in here quick. We're planting the rest August 12th and 13th. But it's so awesome to look down and see our little tiny brassica plants coming in on this side. We have buckwheat, tillage radish, peas on the other side. This has been a huge success for us, but most of all, guys, thank you so much. I know the seed is really high priced this year. We will drastically reduce that for next year. I urge you to check it out on our site. We have the Big Boost Brassica, our fall power greens. We have limited supplies. We appreciate your business. Thank you so much for watching. Now back to the video. Well, I don't understand that, because I actually am passionate about my deer hunting. And if I didn't have a lot of time to devote to habitat and doing what I do on private land, I'd do that in the form of scouting. So anytime I've hunted public land, I have in the back of my head a dozen spots that I could go sit in. And that's what's really cool, is you burn out one spot on public land, you just go find another. And so to have evening, morning stands, evening more related to food, morning always more related to bedding areas, is a great tactic on public land, let alone private land. But again, completely different spots. A lot of failures when it comes, of course, not shooting your bow enough, not being prepared, not controlling your scent by your stand location. You're relying on gizmos, gadgets. Someone made a great comment the other day on controlling your scent and preseason scent control. Before the season even begins, you should be all set. They said something like, they couldn't wait to share this with a lot of their buddies, because a lot of their buddies think that scent control begins the night before the hunt. Cleaning your clothes, using a scent contraption machine, that's all it takes, right? Just spray everything down, use a scent contraption machine, go sit in a blind, and you'll be covered. That's not the way it works. This happens months in advance. It takes planning, but it doesn't take a lot of work. It just takes planning. Stand location's always the best form of scent control. It's interesting, I talk about a lot of times that in your off-season scouting, and we're gonna get to this point right here, and this is leading up to that, but I talk about in your off-season scouting, even wrote an article for Matthews Archery in the last week, and it was all about that people are so summer focused with their scouting in the off season, in the lure of these big giant velvet clad monsters out there in the fields, that they really forget about where deer should actually be in October, November, December, which is a lot of times a mile away, especially when it comes to mature bucks. Specifically when it comes to mature bucks. Mature being relative. Doesn't matter if that's a 2-year-old in your area or 7-year-old, but they're so focused on where those bucks are at during the summertime, they're forgetting where they're at actually during the fall, where they should be during the fall. They should be in fall food sources, and mature buck will travel and find the best food. Does and fawns have a fraction, 20% the home range of a mature buck. So they don't travel very far. They're more homebodies. They need thick cover all year, and they need food. But when it comes to mature bucks, they're willing to travel for it, find it, change your location, and they're going to be in a completely different spot. So I talk about often that your off-season scouting, your activities, your stand locations, your cameras should really be fall focused. That's what that article is about. So we'll switch it up a little bit. When it comes to opening day in the early season, these bucks, for just a few days sometimes, for a week, are in their summer patterns. Kind of getting back to sitting all day in a stand. That's a peak rut move. You're in between bedding, feeding, you're looking for a spot. We're going through our 2022 whitetail rut forecast video, probably today. We'll be shooting that. And I'm gonna go into stands, talk about a classic pre-rut spot, a classic lockdown spot, a classic peak rut, classic post-rut locations where you can sit, and why you would sit in those areas during those phases of the rut. And it's a great tactic, obviously, to focus on those locations during the fall. But when it comes to the preseason and going out and finding a spot on opening day, this is that one time where you can capitalize on those summer movements. And so I find that you get sucked into not only summertime, you're not fall planning, that a lot of times opening day, you're going out and sitting in a rut stand where you could sit all day, and you're saying that's going to be a good spot for opening day, and in a completely different locations. A fall buck that's in November in his November hangout. Like, for example, we don't have a lot of big bucks on our property right now, a lot of the older ones. We have a couple 5-year-olds, but we have some legitimate 6- and 7-year-old monsters in the area that I'm hoping to see and have a close encounter with this fall. I want to see them up close and personal, like that on the ground in front of me. We don't see those right now because they're in their summer hangouts. Yeah, just talking to Dylan, it makes you still a little bit nervous, even though we've done this every year for years. And I talk to my clients off the ledge during the summertime that they're not seeing these big bucks because they always see them in the fall. I always see them in the fall. I want them living on my property an unfair percentage of the time during the fall, but that's a completely different location than where they're at opening day. Although you should be fall focused in everything you do, opening day is a different scenario. In that first early season, you need to be on target. And the one point I can make under this, if you're too fall focused for opener of bow season, is that you really need to concentrate on evening hunts over food. And when should your opening day be? And I'll talk about this in follow-up videos of this too. Your opening day should be, to me, if you have the time, if opening day is on Wednesday, for example, and in Wednesday of this year, your opening day for whatever, October 1st, Michigan, it falls on October 1st. That might be a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I haven't looked at the date, but let's say it's 90 degrees that day and you can hunt the weekend, or you can hunt 3 days later and it's supposed to be a temp drop. I'd hunt the temp drop because you only get one chance. You go into that evening food source, if you have a nice buck hanging out or a bachelor group that's coming in, and you hunt in a wrong time, you leave some sun around, they pick it up 2 hours later after dark, or they pick it up when you're walking out of the stand, your hunt's done in that spot for the opener until next year. You don't get another do-over. You don't get a do-over at all when it comes to opening day. And so it really pays to be on target and go in as a tactician, look at it and say, these bucks are coming out in this location over this food source, public or private land. They're eating some nice white oaks on a white oak flat. They're eating some white oak acorns, but you have one chance. Go in there, make sure the conditions are good. You're going in there expecting success, but when it doesn't happen, you immediately turn to fall focused because you get one chance at those patterns. Make it count. Make sure you're focusing on the right time. There's some limited times for hunting in the morning. I can think of bucks in public land setting. They're out distant public land fields, private land on ag fields. They're coming back into a small wood lot, maybe across a river system. You get into the backside of that wood lot, blow your scent back into the river. It's 300 yards from that ag. These bucks are bedding back on the banks of the river. I can see this in my head, some of these scenarios that has taken place and worked. You're getting there very early. It's a good cool morning. Those bucks are out in the fields, out in their oak flats on open public land woods, and you're waiting for them to come back to those bedding areas to you in the morning. And you can get out quickly. If they're not there, no harm, no foul. There's some opportunities like that. But that again is a completely opposite stand location from where you should be hunting in the evening when you're hunting food source movement for those bucks that are just entering that food source right before dark. So really make sure you hone in on that opening day. Forget about all my advice about being fall focused, at least for that day or two, that 1, 2, 3, 4 sits. Go in, precision, highly planned, strategic, smart, get in, have an exit plan. You're not spooking a lot of deer when you're in there. Take advantage of for those 1 or 2 sits that first week. And I know people have made a career on that. They're hunting big giant bucks going out to ag fields. They go in, they slay a monster, similar patterns every single year, but that pattern doesn't work a week or 2 later. Remember that, and you'll be on target for opening day this year for those first couple sets, and you make sure you're not wasting an opportunity that is very fleeting, and you have to wait a whole nother year to experience and potentially find some success. Make sure you take your mark, take your chance, hone in, and get a great chance, an opportunity, plan for it on an early season opening day monster this fall. Folks, I want to make sure you check out my web class video series, whether it's how to design your food plot program or how to design your property in general. And we have a new one coming out that'll be how to hunt the rut. But these bucks back here are a testament. Some of these bucks go back to 93. They're even in different states. I urge you to check out those web classes that you can help yourself, help your land, help your hunt. The link is in the description. And also for those that have tried them out, I encourage you to offer some feedback in the comments below. Thank you.